I still remember the last thing my sister said to me across the family dinner table. "You're either with us or you're irrelevant." That was 4 years ago, and I haven't been home since. My name is Claire Benton. I'm 29 now. The last time I set foot in the Benton family estate, I was 25, terrified, and holding on to the last shreds of who I thought I was supposed to be. My family owns Benton Interiors, a high-end furniture company with deep roots in Oregon and even deeper expectations about who we're all supposed to become. I was supposed to take over someday. Everyone assumed it. I grew up running my fingers along raw cedar planks and sketching prototypes on the backs of napkins. My grandfather, Everett Benton, taught me how to balance aesthetics and function before I could even spell either word. But all of that shattered the day I spoke up. It started with an internal report I found while shadowing the logistics team. One of our overseas suppliers, a small factory in Thailand, had inconsistencies in their labor practices. I dug deeper and found evidence of underage workers, unsafe conditions, and fake certifications. I brought it to my father, assuming he'd be horrified. He wasn't. He told me, and I quote, "Don't go poking into things you don't understand, Claire. You're not a lawyer. You're an heir." I couldn't sleep for nights. My stomach twisted every time I thought about those kids. So I reached out to a legal nonprofit anonymously and asked what it would take to push for supplier reform. When my email was leaked, and yes, it was leaked, the board called an emergency meeting. They didn't thank me. They removed me. They called it a conflict of interest. I called it cowardice. My father called it betrayal. "You don't belong here anymore," he said. "You've made your choice." My mother said nothing. Marcy, my younger sister, golden child, poster girl for every campaign we've ever run, just smiled that tight, pitying smile of hers and said, "You always did want to be a savior. Maybe now you'll learn how the real world works." I left that night with a duffel bag, my laptop, and a savings account barely enough to cover 2 months of rent. But I didn't quit. I moved into an old van I bought off Craigslist and spent the next 2 years living like a ghost, tutoring, freelancing, waiting tables, and applying to every accelerated law program that would look at me. I got accepted into one in Seattle, and I've been clawing my way through ever since. I'm not trying to be a martyr. I just couldn't look away. I couldn't unknow what I knew. This week, something happened. I was sipping burnt diner coffee after class when I got an email from the Northwest Business Ethics Conference. I figured it was just a newsletter or a mailing list I never unsubscribed from. But no, it was a formal invitation to speak. They wanted me, Claire Benton, to be part of a panel on corporate accountability. I almost dropped my mug. At the bottom of the invite, in small text, was the name of another keynote speaker, Marcy Benton. Yeah, my sister. Turns out, the Benton family's PR team pitched her as a shining example of family business resilience in the post-pandemic era. Whatever that means. I laughed out loud in the middle of the diner, loud enough for the waitress to shoot me a look. That night, I called Maya, my best friend and the only person who stuck around through everything. I told her I wasn't going. I'm not walking into a room where she gets applauded for standing on a stage I was shoved off of. Maya was quiet for a second. Then she said, "What if that stage is exactly where you're supposed to stand?" I didn't sleep. This morning, I got a voicemail from a name I didn't recognize. Someone from the conference committee. "Hi, Claire. Just wanted to confirm your attendance. Also, between us, your sister initially submitted your bio as part of her panel pitch. She must have assumed you wouldn't show up. Just thought you should know." My hands went ice cold. I haven't replied yet, but I'm staring at the RSVP button. And I think I know what I'm about to do. I hit RSVP before I could change my mind. The second I did, I felt sick. Not because I wasn't ready to face her. I'd been rehearsing that showdown in my head for years. But because I knew deep down this wasn't about proving a point to Marcy. It was about proving something to myself. That I could step back into their world and not shrink. Not flinch. Still, I couldn't stop the flood of memories as the date crept closer. The last time I'd seen Marcy in public was 6 months after I left home. I was working the evening shift at a bookstore cafe in Portland, mostly just scraping by and pretending to study between coffee orders. I looked up and saw her on the flat screen mounted above the espresso machine, giving a TEDx talk in a custom blazer, smiling that polished smile, telling a crowd of clean-shaven donors that Benton Interiors had always prioritized ethical sourcing. She used my words. She lifted entire phrases from my internal proposal, one I'd written the year before I got iced out, and passed them off as her original insights. The audience clapped. The camera zoomed in, and I stood there, holding a chipped mug with milk foam on my shirt, watching my own thoughts come out of someone else's mouth. That night, I cried in the back alley behind the store until my manager told me to go home early. So yeah, I was angry. But it wasn't until I opened the manila envelope my mom had sent that I remembered what hope used to feel like. It had arrived months earlier. No return address, just my name written in familiar cursive. Inside was an old sketch folded into fourths. A chair design my grandfather and I worked on when I was 16. It had never been produced. We called it the Horizon. Low-profile, balanced curves, legs that arched like sunrise. I'd almost forgotten it existed. On the back, in faded pencil, Grandpa had scrawled, "For Claire, when she's ready to build her own table." I hadn't spoken to my mom in over a year, but I knew it was her way of reaching out without really saying anything. The envelope didn't include a letter, no apology, no explanation, just the sketch. A few days before the conference, I got a call from one of the event organizers, a guy named Ellis. "Just confirming your time slot, Claire. Also, off the record, your sister's PR team tried to get you moved to a different day. Said it would be too redundant having both of you speak, but the board pushed back." Of course they did. I spent the next 3 nights reworking my speech. I didn't want to go in there swinging. I wanted to say something that mattered, something they couldn't edit out of context or dress up in marketing lingo. Maya helped me pick an outfit. Simple black pantsuit, no jewelry except Grandpa's old measuring tape, looped like a bracelet around my wrist. It was frayed, stained, probably worthless to anyone else. But it was mine. The morning of the conference, I walked into the venue with shaking hands and a throat dry from over-rehearsing. The event was hosted in a boutique hotel ballroom. White tablecloths, LED screens, and too much citrus-scented hand sanitizer. Marcy was already there, surrounded by a cluster of interns and PR staff. She looked up, made eye contact, and blinked. Like she'd seen a ghost. I smiled politely and kept walking. Her panel was first. She spoke confidently, as always, about sustainable growth, community investment, and lessons learned through generational stewardship. It was slick. No mention of the 2019 labor violations. No mention of me. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the podium, adjusted the mic, and pulled out the Horizon sketch. I didn't attack anyone. I didn't name names. I talked about how legacy isn't inherited. It's earned. I talked about how integrity doesn't mean never making mistakes. It means owning them when you do. And I ended with this. When someone tells you there's only one seat at the table, remember, you can always build your own. Sometimes from scratch. Sometimes from the pieces they tried to throw away. People clapped. Some stood. I kept my eyes off Marcy. Afterward, as I collected my things, a middle-aged woman approached me in tears. "My daughter wants to be an architect," she said. "Your speech? It gave me the words I didn't have to defend her choices." I thanked her, held it together, until Ellis caught me on the way out and slipped me a folded note. "Check the Bangkok supplier invoices from Q4 2019. Your name's on the approval line, in someone else's handwriting." My ears rang. They'd forged my signature, and I finally understood just how far Marcy had gone to bury me. I stared at the folded note like it might catch fire in my hand. "Check the Bangkok supplier invoices from Q4 2019. Your name's on the approval line, in someone else's handwriting." I barely made it back to my hotel room before my knees buckled. My brain kept cycling through the same 2 thoughts. They forged my signature, and they planned for me to disappear. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the armchair by the window, laptop glowing in my lap, chasing the ghost of a paper trail that should have never had my name on it. And there it was, buried inside a scanned PDF from 4 years ago, under Export Clearance, Benton Interiors, Southeast Division. Authorized by Claire Benton. But I never signed that document. I'd never even seen it. The handwriting was close, neat, cursive, but it wasn't mine. It looked more like Marcy's. Just enough difference to pass under casual scrutiny. Just enough similarity to let it slip by unnoticed. Unless someone was looking. And clearly someone had been. I don't know what scared me more. That my sister had forged my name on an international contract tied to labor violations, or that she'd been so sure I wouldn't fight back that she'd left it there, like a rotting secret tucked under an antique cushion. My chest burned with a mix of fury and grief. She hadn't just stolen my voice. She'd weaponized my silence. I spent the next day calling in favors, a professor from law school, a contact from the ethics nonprofit I'd reached out to years ago, and Maya, of course, who offered to drive 5 hours just to sit with me while I figured out what the hell to do next. By the time the sun set, we had a plan. Quiet, legal, precise. I sent the documents, with annotations, citations, everything, to a group of investigative reporters known for exposing corporate white-collar cover-ups. No grand press conference, no courtroom monologue, just truth, straight from the source. Then I closed my laptop and cried harder than I have in years. It wasn't the kind of cry you see in movies. It wasn't graceful or silent. It was ugly. Hiccuping sobs, snot down my face, fists clutching the hotel blanket like it might hold me together. Because beneath the anger and the adrenaline, there was just loss. I didn't want revenge. Not really. I just wanted the person who used to braid my hair and sneak Oreos into my backpack on test days. The sister who once called me her best friend in front of her whole 3rd grade class and didn't even blush. I wanted her back, but she was gone. 2 days later, Benton Interiors made the front page of the Oregon Standard under the headline, Heir's Signature Tied to Supplier Scandal, Insider Whistleblower Disputes Authenticity. The article included scanned images of the contract, expert analysis of the handwriting, and a brief quote from me, anonymous but direct. Integrity doesn't require loyalty to a lie. That afternoon, I got a call from a blocked number. I answered it stupidly, thinking maybe, just maybe, it was Marcy. It wasn't. It was my father. Claire, he said, his voice slow and clipped. What have you done? I let the silence stretch until it hurt. You knew, I said. Didn't you? He didn't deny it. We were protecting the company, he said flatly. We thought you'd moved on. I laughed, sharp, hollow. You thought I wouldn't matter anymore? No, he said quietly. We hoped you wouldn't come back. And just like that, the final thread snapped. They hadn't just tried to erase me. They'd counted on it. My absence wasn't a wound to them. It was part of the plan. I hung up without another word. Later that night, Maya found me sitting on the curb outside the hotel, still in my conference clothes, still shaking. She didn't say anything. She just sat down and handed me a milkshake. We drank in silence. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who shared your face, your childhood, your last name, I just want you to know you're not alone. It cuts deep. Deeper than any breakup. Because the world tells you family is forever. But sometimes, family hands you the knife and tells you to smile while they twist it. And if that's ever been your truth, I see you. I believe you. And you matter, even if they planned for you not to. I always thought revenge looked like rage. Like shouting in boardrooms, slamming doors, storming stages with receipts. Turns out it looks more like me. Quiet, tired, carrying 3 manila folders and a flash drive. The week after the article broke was pure chaos. Calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Emails from journalists, my old professors. Even a voicemail from an anonymous intern at Benton Interiors that just said, Thank you. You don't know how long we've all been waiting for someone to do what you did. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I booked a train back to my grandfather's cabin, the only piece of land the company never touched. He'd left it to me in his will, along with one sentence. Use this place when the world forgets who you are. I sat on the floor, surrounded by dust and old toolboxes, scanning every blueprint, note, and prototype he ever filed away. And there it was again, the horizon and that chair we'd dreamed up together. But this time with a post-it note I'd somehow missed before. Never let them strip the finish off your name. God, I cried. It was the first time I allowed myself to cry since the article. Because for once, I wasn't crying from betrayal or anger. I was crying from recognition. He saw this moment coming long before I did. That same night, I found an envelope my mom had slipped into my bag without me noticing. Inside was a scrapbook. Not the kind with glitter and stickers, but full-page clippings, court filings, ethics awards, newsletters, screenshots of my first published law article, even a blurry photo from the panel I'd just spoken on. Every headline had my name circled in red ink. Some had check marks next to them, like she was keeping score. It wasn't the apology I'd always wanted, but it was something. Proof that even from a distance she'd been watching. The next day, my phone rang. No caller ID. I answered it out of instinct. "Claire," a man's voice said, low and tense. "It's David." It took me a second to place it. David Carr, legal counsel for Benton Interiors. Also Marcy's boyfriend. Or maybe fiancé, I'd stopped keeping track. He didn't waste time. "She's spiraling," he said. "She knows she's done. The board's split. Some want to remove her, others are stalling. She thinks if she throws someone else under the bus, she might survive it." "And let me guess," I said, already knowing. "I'm the bus." "She's rewriting everything," he said. "She has her assistant digging for anything you touched while you were still on payroll. Contracts, emails. She's going to claim you were the one who misled the board in 2019. I bit down hard enough to taste blood." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. There was a pause. Then he said, "Because I used to believe in her, and now I'm just scared of her." I hung up, but not before asking one last question. "Did she forge it alone?" He didn't answer, just exhaled sharply and said, "You're smarter than that." That night, I didn't sleep. I rewrote my affidavit, cross-checked every document, filed a motion through a pro bono legal alliance for whistleblower protection, and moved every damn file onto an encrypted backup drive. And then I did something bold. I submitted the Horizon design to the National Independent Craftsman Registry, a nonprofit that helps artisans protect original work. But I didn't submit it as Claire Benton. I used my grandfather's full name as a co-creator. Everett James Benton and Claire E. Benton. Let the world see the real roots of that company for once. And then, I made the call I swore I'd never make. I called my mother. She picked up on the second ring. "I was wondering when you'd reach out," she said softly. "I'm not here to play happy family," I snapped. "But I need to ask you something. And I need the truth." "Anything," she said. "Did you know about the signature? Did you know Marcy forged it?" Silence. Then, "Yes. But I didn't know she kept doing it." My whole body went cold. "Kept?" I asked. "As in, more than one?" She exhaled like the air had left her lungs. "She forged your name on the board inheritance transfer after Grandpa died." I swear the world tilted sideways. "What?" I whispered. "It was meant for you," she said, her voice breaking. "You were the primary heir. He left you the controlling shares." My vision blurred. They hadn't just pushed me out. They stole the company that was supposed to be mine. I know this was a lot. But if you've ever felt like someone rewrote your story without your consent, just know, you're not crazy. Sometimes they don't just erase you. They forge a whole new version of you. One that can't speak back. But I'm done being silent. The morning of the board hearing, I wore the same blazer I defended my first pro bono case in. Not because it was lucky, but because it reminded me who I was before they tried to break me. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I just showed up. The receptionist at Benton Interiors looked like she'd seen a ghost. She buzzed me in without a word. I walked past portraits of my grandfather, the real founder, and past a massive wall plaque that still bore my last name, even if no one in that building wanted to say it out loud. Inside the boardroom, the energy shifted the second I entered. 12 members. All eyes turned to me. Some stunned. A few guilty. Marcy? She didn't look up. Not even once. The chairperson, an older man who used to call me kiddo when I brought lunch to design meetings, cleared his throat. Claire, this is unexpected. I pulled a small envelope from my bag and placed it in the center of the table. In that envelope, I said, is a certified statement of my grandfather's will, along with a notarized copy of the original board transfer documents, and the forensic handwriting report. They didn't move. I leaned in. She forged it. You let her. And now you get to decide whether you're a company that buries the truth, or one that lives up to the legacy you keep bragging about. No one spoke for a full minute. Then, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, my sister looked up. Her voice was soft, almost rehearsed. I never meant to hurt you. You didn't hurt me, I said. You tried to erase me. That's not the same thing. She stood, shaky but proud, like she still thought she could talk her way out of this. I built this place, she said. I carried it through pandemic losses, supplier failures, everything. I earned this. You forged my name on documents that gave you power that wasn't yours. You exploited underage labor to protect margins. You called me irrelevant, and you stole the company Grandpa meant for me. She went quiet. The room stayed still. Then came the chairperson's voice. Careful. Low. Marcy, he said. We'll need you to step outside. She flinched, just a little, but she walked out without another word. 30 minutes later, they called me back in. Your voting rights are reinstated, Claire, he said, effective immediately. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just nodded. The company wasn't my goal. Justice was. But reclaiming what was mine? That tasted sweeter than I imagined. A month later, I watched from the back of the courtroom as my sister entered a plea deal. False documentation, breach of fiduciary duty, and ethics violations. She avoided jail time, but not headlines, and not the professional disgrace. She disappeared from Portland's social circuit overnight. I still don't know where she is, but last week I received a package with no return address. Inside was the Horizon. One chair, handcrafted, perfectly built, the design she stole, finally made real. Underneath the seat was a single note. It was always yours. I don't know if it was guilt, closure, or a final attempt to rewrite the narrative. But I placed that chair in my office, next to my bar certification, across from a framed copy of the article that started it all. Some people inherit legacies. Others build them back up, splinter by splinter. I did both. And I did it in my name. What I've learned? You don't have to scream to be powerful. You just have to refuse to disappear, especially when someone else is cashing checks off your silence. If this hit close to home, if someone ever tried to rewrite your story without your permission, I'd really love to hear your experience in the comments. And if these kinds of stories speak to you, I hope you'll stick around. There are more truths worth telling.